We are here with Imran Hirani from Nielsen. Imran, thank you for coming today.
Thank you, my pleasure.
And you gave some fabulous information and stats and insights about Hispanics and mobile. And I know the audience loved all the information. But for the people who weren't able to make it today, could you tell the audience a little bit about what you spoke about?
Sure. I think a couple of things that were really important to understand are that Hispanics are over-indexing on their engagement with mobile devices. So that means that they're more likely to be using web on phone, they're more likely to be using apps on phone, they're more likely to be doing mobile commerce, gaming, anything, you name it, they're over-indexing on those activities. Another thing that's really important to know is that over-indexing is not universal. It really does change as you look at different segments of the Hispanic market. When you look at lower acculturation versus higher acculturation, language has a big role to play in terms of how much of that content you consume and how likely you are to engage in those mobile activities.
And so you also sat on the brand panel afterwards, and there was the focus group before you. So a lot of information today. Was there something that you learned or something that you're going to take home with you tonight?
You know, I think one of the things that I found most interesting from the focus group was the reactions that we got on how people react to Spanish language advertising when it is not their primary language at home. Even though they may be very comfortable with Spanish, if they're browsing on an English language website, there might be an assumption being made around because that website's content is Hispanic oriented, they might be getting a Spanish language message, and that can turn out to be actually offensive as opposed to seen as a marketer trying to embrace you and your culture. It's actually seen as offensive, and so I think that that's an interesting message for brands to take home and to use to understand. We really need to understand what the preference is on language of communication, as opposed to making an assumption that that talking to them in a particular language is going to make them feel welcomed.
Yeah, and that was a really visceral response too. So I thought like there's some deep emotions behind that, and it was curious to me that they would say something like that. And meanwhile, all the talk out there on Hispanic marketing has always been about speaking to them in their language as being part of it, but it didn't seem like that today.
It didn't, and I likened it a little bit to somebody used the words invasion of privacy because it seemed like in some cases they took it as there was an interpretation made just because their last name was a particular Hispanic-oriented last name that they felt it was an invasion of their privacy, and maybe a little bit of stereotyping as well.
It was like an offensive assumption almost.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's fabulous. Thank you again for coming today, and we hope we can do some more work in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Great.